Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and by now I have already started and completed another character. Haven't really had a chance to put up a YouTube of it yet up until now, so it is an introduction and a conclusion all in one, as well as some uber elderage. And this time around it is Molten Strike. Now I wanted to play Molten Strike simply because the new microtransaction came out, and it is one of the pretty much strongest delve skills possible at the moment, and that is because it hits a lot of targets, and you can abuse some pretty broken helm enchants, additional proj mechanics through Dying Sun, various other things, and life gain on hit. So it kind of feels like one of the only skills that have really survived the old Valpact nerfs, where you can still feel like you have instant leech, and that's because you hit so many times with so many balls so fast that even the smallest amounts of life gain on hit, when hitting lots of targets or even one target lots of times, makes it feel like you are leeching straight to full instantly every time. So with this character, I wanted to make a bit different of a sort of scaling Molten Strike, because there are a lot of Molten Strikes out there at this point for you to look at, and probably a lot better ones to do, but I wanted to be a little bit different, and that's why I went Hand of Wisdom and Action Claw, which is an int stacking claw that gives you lightning damage per int, and then a Mask of the Stitched Demon, which is an incursion helmet that gives you life per int. So instead of going a traditional Hand of Wisdom and Action, decided to go a fully life-based one, thanks to Mask of the Stitched Demon being pretty available through the Reliquary keys and not too expensive. At this point, this won't really be much of a video recommending the character or how to build the character too much, because it's not really recommended. Since Mask of the Stitched Demon, after I've picked it up, has gone up way too much in price, and it's not too available thanks to only being able to get it through the keys. It's not really something you can follow too cheaply or easily at all, but like I said, it will be more of a Molten Strike video and showing you still the character, but then telling you that Molten Strike is probably the way to go with a lot of these deep delvings, and a very strong way of building a character, and then giving you a few alternatives. Because it's certainly not the first time I've played Molten Strike, and I've probably made stronger Molten Strikes than this one, like a Brutus-led Sprinkler version or a Crit Pathfinder version that does just pure elemental damage. And currently things like a Nebuloc Juggernaut is a very popular way of building a Molten Strike. Brutus-led Sprinkler is still a really good option as well, just pure life-based fire damage. Just the Jug variants are really popular because the further you go into Delve, the tankier you want to be, and Juggernaut does do that for you with all of the physical damage that you don't take in the end, thanks to the Jug passives, as well as the elemental damage reduction. And then you can also use things like Grow with Shank even, if you want to go extremely balls to the wall style of play. But this one, like I said, just Hand of Wisdom and Action. Tried to stack as much int as I could, hit about 1000 int in the end, and it does hit fairly hard. Part of the problems of it though are that you don't really slow anything down, you don't freeze, chill, shatter, that sort of thing. So everything does get quite a lot of freedom and mobility, and you can get punished for that by getting hit by many mobs at once. Rarely, if ever, was I dying on this character, but it's definitely doable with the playstyle, and a little bit awkward sometimes when everything has free reign to hit you. It is a type of character that can farm endgame quite relentlessly. I did do a couple of Uber Elders all the way through from tier 16 maps, including the Guardians and Elder Guardians and Uber Elder, while still maintaining XP and not dying. But there were times when I would fuck it up and still die. So it's not a foolproof character like some Molten Strikes definitely can be, but Molten Strike definitely also gives you the opportunity for it to become a foolproof character. And all I really want to say is that it's a very versatile skill at the moment, with the strength of the Wildfire Jewels, with the strength of the Dying Sun, the Helm enchant, which is probably one of the most popular and expensive helm enchants out there at the moment. So people are mirroring that one with the Fractured Fossils and all that. And it is just one of those skills that for some reason has still flown under the nerf radar. And now that it's got a microtransaction, well, maybe it won't anymore. It is pretty typical of GGG to give you a microtransaction for a skill finally, and then nerf it to the very next patch. For now though, it is still untouched and one of the best things to run for Delve and for endgame bosses. You can see here that I don't actually have any leech, but I will be recovering life quite instantly thanks to all the balls going off at once. And beside that, since Ancestral Call came into play, you can also stack more balls on a single enemy or a single boss than you've ever been able to before, because if you stand out of range of the melee range of the Molten Strike, you will be getting twice as many, or twice, I don't know, as many balls going off on an enemy as before, because you stand just far back enough that Ancestral Call is the only option for the skill to hit, and then you get 2 extra Ancestral Call monsters, or your own buffs hitting it. So it should be, instead of just the 1 regular attack, you then get 2 Molten Strike versions going off at once, so you should get twice as many balls that way. And that does mean that your life gain on hit becomes that much more powerful, that much more potent, and it's really quite a cheesy way to survive the game at this point. And like I said, there are a lot of Molten Strike variants out there for you to consider, and I do recommend at least picking one of them for this league and trying it out, because it's a very strong skill and it's one that you can get quite far in. So I'll go over the character right here, what I did to build it, and then give you a Deathless Uber Elder kill as well. So here is the character that I built. It is currently level 93 Beef Ascendant, and by this point it's been 24 hours of gameplay and I've killed 3 Uber Elders, maybe 4, done every other piece of content I can, all the Guardians, the Shapers, the delves, the pretty deep delving. I've done a few bosses at eye level 83 plus, just some nothing too deep. We're going like depth 300, just going sideways in those matters, and it's been very reliable in all of those cases. Like I said, largely thanks to your friend Molten Strike. So there it is. It has 7 projectiles, and it's basically one of the skills that has the best threshold in the game, most likely. The most necessary one, and that's these wildfires over here, 2 additional projectiles and 2 additional projectiles. So just by default, you get 4 additional projectiles from your jewel sockets, which is super important, and you have to squeeze these in wherever you can, which is kind of tough to do for a pure int or dexterity character like mine, because you do have to find strength nodes within the circle of 40 total. So here for the 40 total, we're looking at something like that, and both of those, I guess. And friendly reminder, you don't have to have the 40 strength allocated, it just has to be within the radius. So we're using it here and here for the 40 strength totals, and then a bunch of jewels everywhere else for attack speed to fill out our attack speed and our resist, because Molten Strike is one of those skills that has multi-strike, and it feels really bad if you don't get a lot of attack speed, because then you will feel locked down quite frequently in between your dashes and all of that for the deep delves and the Uber Elders and all of that. So you got yourself your Molten Strike, and the helm I'm deciding to build around was Mask of the Stitched Demon. As you can see, provides 1 max life per 2 int, so that's the main draw of the helm, and without the helm I'm looking at 5,300 life, with the helm 6,600. So it is a lot of my life in this character, and that's because I have 1,007 int. Otherwise, traditionally, you are building around Hand of Wisdom and Action as a pure ES, energy shield based character, because you get a lot of int, which gives you a lot of energy shield percentage, and that's why you can see some popular ones out there of the occultists, the tricksters, and just build pure energy shield based Hand of Wisdom and Action characters. And it can be any skill, you don't have to do Molten Strike. Blade Flurry works well, Spectral Throw works really well, and then Molten Strike works really well as well. There's plenty of others too, but those I'd say are the main ones. And that means that you can just flat stack lightning onto your skill, whatever skill it is, and go Hand of Wisdom and Action intelligence stacking across all of your gear, and try and get percent attributes wherever you can, which is currently, I think, the chest mostly, the belt, and your amulet. As well as that, the amulet here has increased damage per 15 int. You can try and craft one of these yourself throughout alterations, just for increased damage per int. Get an org and then regal it, and should be okay. But the best ones will have int as well, maybe even percent attributes. And the real nice thing about this helm is it doesn't stress your the rest of your gear for a lot of life. So you can bend a bunch of your gear for life. So I've only got 40 there, only got 39 there, because primarily you get almost all of your life count coming from the int to life conversion from the helm. Like I said, the helm is not super easy to get anymore thanks to reliquary keys, so I'm not sure I can really recommend this version of the build anymore. I'm still showing you how I did it, but it's just not that worth it for the cost you're going to be putting in, because the helm itself is going to be expensive, and then all of the int gear is going to be hard to get and pretty expensive, and it just isn't that good of a Molten Strike character compared to the other ones you can do, like a Nebulok Jug, a Brutus-led Sprinkler Jug, Chieftains, other Scions, Pathfinders, all of that shit will perform just about as well, probably at a fraction of the cost at this point. But I do really enjoy just int and stat stacking characters. So int into lightning, fire from strength, and cold from dexterity. They're really fun to build around because you're not just looking for plain damage, plain life resists anymore. You're also looking for the stats, the percent ints, the ints, and it makes it kind of a fun build to put together and craft a bunch of shit as well. The only other thing I should mention about my gear is I'm wearing a taming. It's not really necessary, it's just that they're 2.5 exalts when I bought one, and it filled out my resists really nicely, almost 40 to all resists, as well as giving me 100% increased ele damage, because I do always shock and ignite enemies. So it's not strictly necessary, but it filled out a lot of my resists on this character, because the way I've built it doesn't leave much for resists on most of your gear. Just got one resist there, none there, little crafted one, and a lot coming from my boots, a lot coming from my ring, and then a lot coming from all of my jewels that have a hybrid resist mod. The only other jewel I'm using is a Fertile Mind over here, which gives quite a decent chunk of int, converting all of our dexterity, and then a Watcher's Eye that has penetration of wrath. But like I said, not necessarily the only way you should be building a Molten Strike character. Maybe cold-based dex stacking could go the way like my previous Deadeye, but I'd say probably the Pathfinder that I played quite a while ago from the Harbinger League is probably one of the strongest ways to go, and that's over here. So you have Elemental Buzzsaw, Molten Strike Pathfinder. Now, that was a character that used Spectral Throw for your clear, and it was in a Tempest Binding. You don't have to use a Tempest Binding anymore. You can get Elder Helms that do the same shit. But at this point, Molten Strike is good enough to clear on its own ever since it got changed to drop its balls faster. So you don't even need a secondary skill, but you can still get one if you really like. Instead, you can just go Molten Strike as the main attack throughout your entire skill base. This character was built as a triple elemental and a Lycosidae, so shield, sword, had insane damage, insane survivability, and it was a just Pathfinder, so you'd have very reliable flask uptime. And this one is back during the Harbinger League if you want to check that one out. I do have some few videos around that one. Brutus-led Sprinkler, another good option. Just strength stacking, as well as dex stacking, just Molten Strikes everywhere. I do recommend you check out other people's Molten Strike builds as well before you decide which Molten Strike is right for you. Just to give a quick summary of how my character works here, we do get a lot of int throughout the character, passive tree, all of that, to get lightning damage over here, and then we're using Molten Strike attached to damage on full life, multi-strike, concentrated effect, ele damage with attacks, and ancestral call. And most of the time I'm running lightning pen instead of conk effect, because you don't really want to fully clear with conk effect throughout most of your maps and all that, so save it for the boss fights and that sort of thing. Otherwise it is really comfortable to clear with, and gets a lot of spread. Not the best clear skill for a lot of maps that have open worlds and a lot of monsters everywhere, but things that are close to you, tighter maps, it's still very good and efficient in that regard. I'm running Herald of Thunder and Wrath over here. I have a cast when damage taken Immortal Call. That's pretty important in a build like this because things will hit you quite often, and getting that little grace period of immunity thanks to the Immortal Call helps a lot for you to get your damage in afterwards, and then an Enfeeble as well. Up here I have Orb of Storms attached to Blind, Crit Strikes, and Ancestral Protector. So Ancestral Protector, he's just a buff that gives you more attack speed. Orb of Storms then has Blind and helps trigger your Elemental Overload. And then I'm running Wrath, Lightning Golem, and Herald of Thunder, though primarily I've only been really summoning regular ice golems here, because they do die quite frequently, so it doesn't really matter. So for a lot of the time I just have 2 ice golems and just let them try and live, because lightning golem isn't super important anyway. The 2 ascendancies I decided to choose here are Elementalist, because good 40 into there, some damage penetration, some guaranteed shock, and then you scale a bit of shock effectiveness. So in the end, Elementalist here is worth something like 25% damage, and you're immune to reflect. And then down here I chose Raider, though you can easily choose Pathfinder or Deadeye. I tossed and turned over which one I should pick quite a lot in this build, but I chose Raider because I haven't played it too much in the Sign Ascendancy, and Frenzies and Onslaught is really nice to have. And then as well as that, we go Path of the Ranger, and that lets you start over here and save a few points on travel. The way I actually leveled the character is to just go and fill out all of this side of the tree first and take Elementalist to begin with. Once I got to Merc Lab, I unspec'd Elementalist so that I could get into Path of the Ranger and then keep this going. Start my tree elsewhere, and then once I got to Uber Lab, that's when I picked Elementalist once again and could fill in the rest of my tree. And just before I show you guys the Uber Elder Kill for how Molten Strike basically plays it, the path of building is over here. I will of course link it to you. Currently it's looking at about 230,000 damage per ball, so when you hit Molten Strike you have to select magma balls. That's per ball, about 230,000 DPS. I have 7 balls, so you can use your imagination quite a lot more, but we also don't tick the shocked enemy here because we're shocking for a baseline of about 15% instead of 10, whereas this, if you tick it, gives you the 50% modifier, so you really never tick the shock unless you're going to guarantee a 50% shock, which is very rare to happen. But so that does mean that our DPS is more like 270,000, something like that per ball. We are always on full life thanks to life gain on hit. I'm always using Frenzies thanks to Raider. You do have to make sure you put in projectile travel distance of 1 because that shows you a full point blank damage number there. So if you sometimes forget to do that, you will be missing a lot of your damage in the path of building. And as well as that, I have a freeze, shock, or ignite, 2 of which just shock and ignite on the enemy. So that's the damage. That's how you see Molten Strike damage, and then you can see your actual magma ball number projectiles around here somewhere. Projectile count 7, and just the entire calculation of your damage around here. So that's basically it for the character, guys. Like I said, not too sure I can recommend it thanks to the helm being what it is at the moment, but Molten Strike is something I definitely recommend that you try out for yourself. Find one of the guides you really like. Maybe the popular jug ones are the best way to go at the moment. But in any case, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and here is the Uber Elder Kill, Deathless.
Putrefy.
I think I might use Blood Rage this time as well. I don't usually. It's gonna go down soon, eh? So yeah, it's not really much of a choice. But I just want more attack speed. Doing a decent bit better this time. Haven't pushed him over like I would have liked so far though. Okay, there it goes. Almost fucked that up though. Definitely fucked it up there. That wasn't supposed to happen. That timing was almost completely atrocious. I almost fucked that up once again. How did I run into a slap just then? I thought I was pretty... Oh my god, I was in a terrible spot. Alright, he should be fine. There you go. Clean as a whistle. Just gotta play better and then it fucking goes better. Nice fusing look. Disintegrator. I don't think I want to use that. Still. Ever. I don't like it. Don't like it that much. Shaped Siege. That's kind of cool though.